Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Sim Grid and welcome to the final round of the Endurance Cup Season 2 here from the wonderful home of British motorsport, Silverstone. Chaz, Draycott and Connall, Courtney, the partners in crime once again, back in the commentary box here. Connall, we have a wonderful, wonderful event ahead of us to round out what's been another incredible season. But first, we've got to get qualifying out of the way. And as you and I have seen before, this is usually one of the deciding factors, isn't it, really? The races may be long, but a lot of the advantage comes from qualifying, doesn't it?
Yeah, exactly that. Hello, everybody. It really, sometimes it doesn't matter if it's 8 hour, 12 hour, 24 hour. Sometimes people can ruin their race in qualifying in terms of fighting at the front, because we've seen so many times maybe a team that should really, when you look at their race pace, be up in the top 3 or top 5, get mired down by 10th or 15th in qualifying, get involved in some mid-pack scuffles where they really shouldn't be, find themselves having damage, they're out of their pit schedule. It just creates a whole sort of snowball effect that lingers throughout the entirety of the race. So it's really important this qualifying session, even though time-wise it's less than a tenth of what they'll be doing out on track. But yeah, it's always crucial qualifying.
And it's a very, very difficult circuit to get right lap after lap as well. So many very different sections of this track. You've got a lot of very twisty, slow corners, and then you've got some very quick corners as well. Some world-famous corners like Maggots and Beckett's to negotiate lap after lap. You've then got to factor in the British weather. We may see rain today. It's not the warmest at the moment. It's cloudy and fast is how I've been given the information for this. But to be fair, Connall, these drivers have to really think about traffic around here. It may be a long lap, but there's so many places here. If you catch traffic at the wrong point, it can ruin a lap completely, can't it?
Yeah, this track is all about flow. It's all about corner speed and momentum. So as soon as you think of like the run onto the hangar straight, you think of the run out of where we're just looking at here, you catch a little bit of traffic, you have to roll off the throttle, you just see your delta just tumbling, and you find yourself losing. What if you had a 2/10 up, you find yourself half a second down. It is one of those tracks where traffic plays a big factor, but that also leads into a bit of racecraft, of course. You can get a little bit unlucky with traffic, but yeah, it's going to be very important in the first few minutes at least to find yourself some clear tarmac. But it's very important also not to be spending too much time trying to find clear tarmac and almost hyper focusing on that, because the seconds really do just click off.
Yeah, they certainly do. They can disappear very, very quickly indeed. What we're going to do there, everybody, just to show you how tricky a circuit this is, we do actually have a hot lap of the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. So we'll ride on board and see just how this is. So starting down the old pit straight towards Copse for this event, all the way over on the curve to the right. Copse a very difficult corner to get right. You want to try and turn in as late as possible, use as little Astro on the exit as possible. You may see people light up the rears through there. Maggots and Beckett's really quick into the left, get the car composed for the right. Then you've got a moment to just try and get it turned in. It's over a slight crest for the second left, then the second right again, hug the apex, and then try and straight line the exit as much as possible. But when you're carrying the speed through there, it is not easy. Once you're out of there, you've got more time to compose yourself down the hangar straight towards Stowe at the bottom of the hill, all the way over to the left, onto the brakes, and again, sort of float away from the apex on the way in. Just take it late, make sure you've got it tucked for the next long sweeping left, and then what is the final two corners, or final three corners on the Grand Prix circuit. Tight chicane, we're going to see a lot of overtakes into there. Careful on the power through the double right, because the car will spin up the rears and you can just wash all of that momentum away. Down the Grand Prix straight you go. We've got another very fast right coming up here. Try and use all the road to get to the curb on the left, chuck it round through the left-hander and then hard onto the brakes. One of the tightest corners on the circuit here, through the right and then the left again. You're going to see a lot of different overlapping lines through there. Maybe a bit of argy-bargy as drivers don't realise there's somebody down there inside. Through the left kink, onto the the straight on the club circuit that they use here, the national circuit I should say. Down towards Brooklands. Hard onto the brakes again. Another one like Stowe, where you have to sort of float away from the apex, then chuck it in when you know you've got it right. Luffield, it's almost like a double apex right-hander Luffield. You clip it on the way in, wash out wide, then take another apex, try and get a run for the line. And the classic old run to the line at Silverstone, you've got to love it. Across the line we go in the Ferrari 488 GT3 Evo. But as I said there, though, Connall, with how this circuit works, it's a very flowing circuit. But I mean, through that newer section that was built, well, over 10 years ago now, there's just so many different lines you can take through there. We are going to see a bit of shenanigans, aren't we, in that section?
Yeah, you can see the way Gregor with his inputs on the wheel. He was fighting with the car there quite a lot in that sector, and that's what we're going to see. And normally, when you see cars or drivers fighting with the car, that leads to mistakes, and when it leads to mistakes, it leads to passing opportunities if you're in a group. So I'd say the run through there will be one of the big overtaking hotspots. But there are plenty here. I mean, especially if the driver in front gets a little wrong, ruins his momentum through a corner, and then you can even see a couple of passes, although they don't generally work, but they are tried around the Maggots Brackets Chapel section, which can be very hard, and from experience, almost career ending. So yeah, it's a tricky sector, but you can make it work if you get lucky and be brave.
Yeah, that's it. Bravery is going to be one of the key words over the course of this race. So we do have 8 hours of racing, beyond, of course, the qualifying session that Connall and I will be covering now. Just having a quick look here. There's a slight issue with something in the session at the minute, apparently. So we're just going to go back to some wonderful B-roll. And to be fair, I mean, these shots are fantastic, aren't they, Connall? We're very lucky to have the team that we do behind the scenes here at the Sim Grid that give us all this wonderful content, aren't we?
Yeah. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. We've got some, as you said, B-roll. I mean, look at this beautiful place. A track is large when you have 2 pit straights. It was the first track I raced at when I first started racing in England, and the longest track in Ireland I think is maybe 1 minute 20 lap. So to go from that to Silverstone was a bit of a culture shock, especially seeing 2 pit straights. I mean, we tried to do a track walk, and by the time we had the track walk, it was about 2 hours later. So yeah, it's definitely it's a culture shock when you first come to a massive track like this. But I suppose that's the same for any Grand Prix caliber circuit.
Yeah, it's an interesting one as well, because it's a very flat circuit. Obviously, it's built on an old airfield. It's been messed with a lot here and there. We do have qualifying underway now. The drivers are just getting out there to start their laps. We're just trying to filter into place. You can see on the map on the right-hand side there just how there is a large sneak of cars making their way down the Grand Prix Straight, the Hamilton Straight, as it is now named. But in terms of the stints that we're doing today, guys, we have myself, Chaz Draycott, and Connall Courtney. We'll be with you throughout all of qualifying, and then in the race, we'll be with you from the very start until about 5:30 GMT, and then we'll be handing over to our wonderful co-commentators, our fantastic friends David Christie and Luke Rogers, who will be taking you through to not only the end of the race, but the very end of the championship. And to be honest, Connall, that's the main thing that we need to remember here today. This is wrapping up an entire championship. It's not just a one-off event. This is a full-blown, massive chunk of what has been a great series. And there are your current championship leaders as well. Yas Heat, that wonderful Mercedes.
Yeah, Yas Heat leading this championship only by 12 points. It is still all to play for. GTWR second place. The Johnny Lacey Esports Academy team are in third in the championship. They have not had the best season early on, sort of rebounded, and then had the big lifesaver in terms of their championship challenge at Paul Ricard with the win in Paul Ricard, and with GTWR finishing 5th there and 10th at Zolder. They've really clawed their way back into a potential championship winning spot. I mean, when you look at the John Lacey team in terms of their form, 8th at Barcelona, 5th at Imola, 6th at Zolder, that really doesn't look like a championship challenge. Then that win at Paul Ricard has really put them back in the hunt. And we also have the Food Critics, the number 39 team. They're on 264 compared to the championship leaders 301. So we've seen a lot happen over the course of 4 hours. So a lot more can even still happen over the course of 8 hours. and it will be a nervy day for these drivers in this fight for the championship.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, when you do look at the standings, they're on the simgrid.com, by the way, everybody. If you want to have a look on the website yourself, then they are on there. We do actually have three, so the top 3 teams in the championship have all won a race each, and then there's a bit of a spread between getting another podium and having an average finish inside the top 10. There is another team that has won a race, but they unfortunately DNF'd and did not race at the last round. That's the ambassadors for Renvelten team, 999 Mercedes. They won at Imola earlier on in the season. So it just goes to show, doesn't it, that even if you do get a win, you know, something may come up and mean that you cannot continue with that championship fight. But it's all about consistency in a series like this, even when there's only 5 rounds. You know, a lot of people, they sort of have this idea that a championship needs to be filled to the max with loads and loads of different rounds. But when you've got a series like this, there's no need for all of that. You know, you have so long in each race to filter out who is going to come out on top and who's going to get championship points. It's quite cutthroat, really, isn't it? Because it gives you no time for rest. You don't sort of see a round and think, oh, that's going to be my drop round. You know, I didn't really enjoy that one. You know, I got very little points. You don't get any messing at all like that, do you?
No, exactly that, and it's exactly what you said, Chaz. No drop rounds. I mean, you look at Yassi, 3rd at Barcelona, 1st at Zolder, 2nd at Paul Ricard, but that 9th in Imola has just given the other teams a chance at this championship going into the 5th round. So one relatively per race. I mean, we can't say 9th. I mean, if I got 9th in this quality field, I'd be jumping for joy and sticking on the CV or something. But you know, if you just finish just outside those sort of high-ranking positions for one race, the teams around you are too good, and they will be up at the sharp end, and they will punish you for any mistakes. And you know, the drivers will have that in the background mind, as we see 56s hit already. Fast track conditions, 14 degrees. It is quite cool. Still 7:05 a.m. So yeah, it's an early morning session here, but these guys have woken up on the right side of the bed because they're already into the 56s, and you can see that spread. Look how close that is. So we're getting word actually, which is a little bit soul destroying for me, that Michael Helmets just informed us that we may expect some 55s in here by the end of this qualifying session, which isn't great news for me to hear, to be honest.
It's certainly exciting to watch, but yeah, I agree. I don't think there's any chance in hell that I'll ever manage to get any pace like that. It's vile pace, but it's great at the same time. Moritz Lohner then, or Lorna, as we've been told, across the line he goes. Look at that, 156.7. Only, what's that, 96,000 to it? Is it ahead? It's a bit blurry on my screen. I think it is 96,000. Niels Nyox across the line goes 8th fastest in the BMW. Great to see the M6 GT3 still being represented. Here's the John Alacy Esports Academy junior driver Alex Fortero in the 72. They've got 27 and 72 out there. 14th place for him, only half a second off. And at the moment, Connall, we've got the top 18 within 1 second of another, and not everybody's even put a lap in yet.
Yeah, well, we're used to that, aren't we, with the Simgrid? The top X amount are within a second, but while we're used to it, it still doesn't get any more exciting, or any less exciting, excuse me. We've got Samiri Brimi in the number 1 car. They were the reigning champions, the Pro N Welton guys, and they looked, when you look back on season 1, they looked really, really strong, had great consistencies, and everyone else around them could compete with them in certain races, but couldn't string a championship season together. And now they are 22nd and in no place to defend their crown going into this race. They're well out of the championship hunt. So it's been a bit of a disaster season for the Ren Welton number 1 car in that BMW, but we know the caliber of them drivers, they really can put out a result even if things aren't completely going their way. As we see Mark Schintz now in the Race Line Motorsport, that Ferrari team really, when you think back to Zolder, I mean, you think of the devastation that they had. They should have won at Zolder, realistically, and then got caught up in that very, very unfortunate incident with a back marker with about 10 minutes to go of a 4-hour race. and the 191 car still yet to win a race, so no doubt they'll be looking to wrap up the season with an outside chance of the championship, no less. It would have to be a lot of bad circumstances happening to the other championship leading teams, but I think their goal for this would just be to break that duck and get that victory.
Yeah, that's it. A lot of the time in these things, you do need a bit of bragging rights when it comes to a championship like this, especially when it's finishing as well. You know, if you do plan on entering another season of it, if and when that comes, then you need to be able to sort of carry that momentum with you. You know, when a season finishes and then you start a new one, teams often remember a couple of things from the last one. It is either who won the championship, who was quick near the end. So if you've won a race and you've proved that you're quick near the end, and it makes a big impact, and who was quick consistently. You know, so if you can get yourself on that list of people that are noticeable, then it adds to the mind games that you can play going into the following season. Here's Vidimari, who's just gone into 25th place in car 25. Quite fitting there in the Energy Racing Team machine. But I love the lighting at the moment. Very British weather, of course, Connall. I'm currently, even though the sun is actually outside my window, I'm still sat here in my dressing gown, because as it is in the UK, even when the sun's out, it's freezing. But it's not the warmest there either, is it? I mean, look, it's 14 degrees, as you can see in the top right of the screen. Track is also 14 degrees. It's not had chance to properly heat up yet. So it looks like the conditions are going to be really good for these lap times. But not only that, you've got to think about tyres over the course of the race as well. You know, tyres may not go off as quickly if the track is nice and cool for them.
Yeah, and that might change strategies as well. Of course, this track can be an absolute tire shredder with long corners, very hard corners, a lot of G's being pulled, and we've certainly seen in Formula 1 it can be a fair tire shredder, the Silverstone track. So the teams would probably be ration actually a little bit of a cold track, but if it is in any way greasy, a lot of these corners can make you spin up the rears quite easy. So that won't help in terms of tyre wear. So it's going to be an interesting balance. We'll see, of course, the race conditions can be totally different to qualifying conditions. So I think these guys would be hoping, I'd say they'd be hoping for similar conditions. The cool track would be helpful. The fast track is not too bad in terms of grip. Of course, they'd obviously love it to be optimum. But I'd say they'd take that. I would if I was part of their team.
Definitely, yeah. Well, we've heard a lot of good things about the McLaren around here. What a place to do it as well. A wonderful McLaren 720 SGT3. This is Tobin Lee, currently on a fast one, just coming through Luffield now. Only one more corner to go by the look of it. And the Jensen Team Rocket RJN machine. Across the line he goes and jumps up to fastest. Fantastic stuff by Tobin Lee. And Luca Burke up there as well, actually. So that's a really, really good thing, especially if you're me, because that's they're actually the Zancho Rocket esports cars that are up there as well. 24 and 23. Hurts me OCD a bit that they're the other way around in terms of number, but great stuff from the Zancho-driven machines. Beautifully done. This is Tobias Peffer, who we've seen before, Connall, be an absolute star in this Lamborghini, haven't we?
Yeah, I mean, Tobias is just insanely quick. I think I was in a daily race server with Tobias a while ago, and I seen him join the server. I knew that the win would be out of the question because he is absolutely rapid. I've seen some of his hot lap times. I've seen him actually in the special event there when the British GT DLC came out. He was leading the way at the Downton hot lap event. Or the Olden hot lap event it was. So yeah, we know the pure pace that Tobias had. We've seen him, of course, have a few instances. We've seen that More Female Racer series. One of my favourite battles ever covering the sim grid was that Mazzano battle that he had with Noir Rose, and those two drivers just had an absolute belter. So yeah, we know the quality of Tobias Pfeffer, and he can really pull out a result when it's needed.
He can indeed. Jaroslav Honzik goes fourth fastest in the number 39 Mercedes at the moment, within 0.2 of pole position. This is Jesus Cecilia for Odox Motorsport, one of my favourite liveries on the grid. What we'd call in sim racing a very realistic livery. You could expect that to appear on the car in real life, that is. certainly does look nice and tidy. Reminds me of like an old Minardi livery from Formula One in the 90s. You know, it's got that main black overall, but it's still got these little hints of different colour that help the sponsorship logos on it. It looks really tasty. Could be a pole position lap as well, Michael Hamlet's just told me in my ear. So he comes across the line now, hugs it to the right, stays into the middle of the road. Second place, just under 1.5 tenths off the top spot, but he splits those McLarens up. And that's one of the important things here, isn't it, Connall? You know, everybody is saying the McLaren is fast. That's just how GT3 racing works. You know, you've got the balance of performance. Cars really do suit certain tracks. But it looks like the McLaren is the car to beat so far today, but Cecilia doing a great job in that Mercedes.
Yeah, very impressive to break the McLaren stronghold at the front. And when we're talking about strengths and weaknesses, like the McLaren has a strength here, but when we're talking about these caliber drivers, I mean, we're talking about tenths and hundredths of a second. I mean, look at the gaps there. Now, Tobias Pfeffer further breaks that McLaren dominance and goes third. So we have McLaren, Mercedes, Lamborghini, 1, 2, and 3. So you can see the list of manufacturers throughout this field, and it's quite well balanced. We see pretty dominant manufacturers, of course, in terms of the list, but you know, it's well spread out, and it's a consistent bunch. It's good to see some of the lesser preferred manufacturers, so we say, get represented. And it just shows you that the level of caliber, it just does come down to driver feeling and how comfortable. There isn't anymore like we've seen early on the Porsche Cup days we had in the Sprint Cup, where it was, you have to be in a Porsche to start competing for wins. I think the balance is really strong here. It just comes down to driver preference.
Yeah, it certainly does. We just had a look at the NBR Mercedes for a second there. The Niek Nepels at the wheel of that number 629 car, one of my favourite liveries on the grid as well. Gorgeous looking machine. Here's the very stealthy looking expat sim racing Audi R8 LMS with Konstantinos Kontongiannis at the wheel. Oh, sorry, Kontongiannis, not Konton. Get it right one day. But the Audi not looking to be one of the most preferred in the field at the moment. They are actually the highest placed Audi as well in the 16th. Here is the Ferrari, sorry, not Ferrari, the Lexus of James Parker. I'm so used to seeing him in a Ferrari, I just defaulted to that. But the Lexus, a car that we're both a fan of. You must admit that the new M4 GT3 looks like a Lexus from the back, doesn't it? It looks like this car, but this thing, it's one of the bigger cars in the field, but it certainly goes well, as James Parker shows, putting it into the top 10 in the 888 machine. Thousands between him and Statsenko and Shintz as well. So it's just about where you're going to slot in the grid, isn't it, Connall? You know, the difference between a good lap that you had in practice and a good lap that you have in qualifying could be thousands, but that could be 2 or even 3 positions here. I mean, look at Bacon and Monroe, 12th and 13th. There's only 3 thousandths of a second between those guys.
Yeah, and you think back to your hot lap and the lap that you've set that time with, and you think of, well, where did I lose 3 thousandths of a second? And it's so small that you can't even think. Of course, you can think of times when you lost 2 tenths, 3 tenths maybe, and that could put you up like 4 or 5 positions. So it's absolutely ridiculous. We see Mark Shintz coming over the line, the 191, desperate for that first win of the season, and goes second, sticks to Ferrari up there. And we've seen from the hot lap, the Ferrari is a bit of a handful in the middle part of the circuit, but when you get it right and you have a quality driver, you can swing the lap. As we see, Lohner almost hit the inside tire or the barrier there. That was very, very close. But what I want to point out is, look where the championship leaders are. Mikel Statsenko, who we've seen arguably between himself and Jordan Sherrod, in my opinion, I've seen as the 2 fastest drivers at the majority of tracks here that we've seen in the sim grid. 12th position on the grid with their championship rivals right up there. The GTWR team second in the championship, 5th so far in qualifying. As we come to Nils Najox and that GT Esports team at BMW goes 5th, and that's a good result because there isn't a lot of BMW contesting the front of the field, and Niels is really flying the flag for the German manufacturer, who's seen actually in Sprint Cup qualifying. Himself and Gregor Schill are part of the team, which is quite scary, and I think they were fastest in the Sprint Cup qualifying, so we know the caliber of Niels and his ability. Yeah, and just pointed out there, we've cut to the other BMW in 23rd, so really is Niels going flying the flag for the Germans. so far. But I want to bring it back to Mikhail Stasenko. He's losing another position, 13th now he is. And this is a real opportunity. I'm sure that he will be on the absolute edge here as we get down to the final few minutes of qualifying. But the GTWR team, no doubt, will be just having a chat about this. We'll be monitoring Stasenko's pace and where he is. But I mean, he's 13th, but he's 4/10 off, Chaz.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? You know, to be that far down with only 4/10 the difference. Even if you just gain 1/10 of a second, you know, you'll jump up 4, maybe 5 places. So it can make all the difference around here. Just one tiny little bit of a clip of a curb that just slows you run out of a corner. A little bit of wheel spin here and there. It can really upset you. This is Lucas Rommel going for the line in the PPR Esports machine. 18th fastest, becomes the fastest Porsche in the field, only just ahead of Bogadl in the number 911. I saw some new pictures actually recently of the Cup car, the new GT3 Cup car that's coming out. Not GT3 spec, but just the Cup car itself. Wonderful looking thing. This is Tobin Lee and another wonderful looking thing. The Zancho Rocket Esports McLaren, 9 thousandths off the top spot. Luca Burke, 15 thousandths off. Oh, Niles Nyox goes fastest in the G2 Esports Beamer. Fantastic stuff for the M6. You've got to love that. An M6 won the Nürburgring 24 hours last year. It looks like that car does not want to be retired yet. Cecilia going fastest again by the look of it here. Let's see what he can do. Oh, he's lost time on the exit though, Michael Solmate. Let's see what he can manage though. Is it top 3? It's second on the grid. So the McLaren's been knocked off the top spot again. Moritz Lorner was fastest, 9 thousandths ahead of Tobin Lee, 15 thousandths ahead of Luca Berg. Well, that changes in the blink of an eye, Connall, and this is why we love this series. It's fantastic.
I mean, honestly, if you had to ask me, I know the caliber of Niels, of course, but if you had to ask me, would a BMW be on pole around here? No, would be the answer. I'd be pretty confident in betting that BMW would not be on pole position, but that was an absolutely phenomenal lap. It's just... So the session is over. Track grip has just gone up to optimum right now, so if anyone's on a hot lap, they will be benefiting from a bit better grip the track is offering. But it doesn't look as though a few of the GTWR guys have taken the flag anyway. Tobias Pfeffer is done. Best place of 7th. Shintz in the pits, Burke in the pits. So 5th, 6th, 7th are done. And more importantly, the championship leaders are done. As Yardier goes up to 6th, only 0.12 off, and a pretty much identical lap time to Luca Burke. And we've got Tobin Lee here in the 24 McLaren. What can he do? He's 0.12, 1/10 off. Can he improve just by a 10th and a half? And that would put him in pole position. He goes to the top, 56.256. He is 600ths quicker than Niels Nyox.
Well, I'm going to have to hold back my bias at the moment, otherwise people will be shouting at me on the stream, but fantastic stuff for Tobin Lee. Here's Tavanari going to the line in the Ferrari, stays 21st, 9/10 off the top spot. Here's Conto Giannis, apparently a big jump coming up from Michael. He can see the sector times. Up he goes, 13th place. Good stuff for the Audi, that as well, to be fair. Here's Vidimari across the line in the Mercedes. He goes up to 17th, and that is it then. Session is over, but Tobin Lee in the McLaren, the Zancho Rocket Esports McLaren, puts it on pole position. Niles Nyox in 2nd place there for G2 Esports. Beautiful stuff from them. And then to make it 3 manufacturers in the top 3, we have the number 14 Odox Motorsport Mercedes. And the interesting thing there as well, Connall, is despite Tobin, Nyox and Cecilia being in the top 3, Nyox, over the course of the lap, did not get any purple sectors, and nobody got more than 1 apiece. That's fantastically consistent by all of them.
Yeah, that's brilliant to see. I don't even know if that's down to the manufacturer differences. I think that is just solely driver differences, and that is even better for us in terms of a race standpoint when we see that well spread out. I mean, you look at the times, so I mean, there's a 10th between the optimum time and, you know, guys in 5th and 6th per sector, and it's ridiculous. So what we're getting here, we're seeing guys like Killian Ryan Meenan, who we know the caliber of that driver, down in 18th, you know, and that is mid-pack. But more importantly, I think Contagianis jumped up to 13th. That pushed Yassi down to 14th on the grid. And it is a long race, 8 hours to make up a lot of time. But if qualifying is indicative of race pace, which it isn't generally, but it can be sometimes, it might be a long day at the office for the Yassi team in terms of maintaining that championship lead.
Yeah, definitely. That's the thing they've got to think about as well. Like I said before, it's not just a one-off event where you just get bragging rights for it and you say, "Oh, we won the 8 hours of Silverstone." It is whether you win this race, whether you do well in this race and just score the championship win. It's all to play for still. Really is. There's obviously what 12 points. Yeah, my math is awful, but 12 points between the top two, which will come down to nothing if they are fighting right together on track. But yeah, this is bound to be a very, very exciting afternoon of racing. As I've said, everybody, you'll have Connall and I until about 5:30 GMT. That's UK time to you and me. And then we have the wonderful, but hard to understand, David Christie and Luke Rogers jumping on. And to be fair, those guys have got one hell of a stint as well, right to the end of the race and to the end of the championship. So it's really, really going to be a good afternoon, especially for everybody in the chat as well. Don't forget, guys, please do like and make sure you subscribe to the Sim Grid. You'll see every event going forward that we have. There's so much going on the Sim Grid at the moment. It's fantastic to be a part of it once again. Feels like forever since I've been in the commentary box. But Connall, any picks for the race based on what you've seen there, mate? Or will we need some time to mull it over before we go into the race session later?
Oh, you ask me again after 7 hours and 59 minutes of the race is gone. I'll probably, even then, I'm not even sure I'll get it right. But I think the McLarens will be strong over the course of the race, of course. But in terms of, I'm trying to think of someone or a team that would be desperate for that win enough to just want it so bad. And I think that number 191, that Ferrari, the Racing Line Motorsports, they haven't got their win. I don't want to say robbed because it was a very unfortunate incident with backmarker, but if I was their team, I'd feel unjustifiably that my race win was taken away at Zolder by that incident. So I think without having a race win and being so close a few times throughout the course of the season, I think they'll be desperate enough to want it over the course of the 8 hours. So I'll put a provisional pick in for the 191 Ferrari.
That's an interesting one indeed. Very interesting. Well, I'm going to have to hold off the bias in who I reckon will go forward for that one. However, everybody, we will have, of course, the race stream for the 8 hours of Silverstone at 1:45 GMT. That's 2:45 CET for any of you wonderful people over there. But Connall and I will be back for that one very, very soon. Michael Hamlet's been on the cameras for this one and will be for the first segment of the race as well. So thank you, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you at 1:45.